Yay, we made it. Happy Friday, everybody. Sorry, we're 8 minutes late. We're having
technical difficulties. We got it.
This is Finance Friday. Welcome to Finance Friday. This is the show where we transform. We're going to be talking about a lot of transformation today. Transform your relationship with your money by giving you the information to help you grow and protect your wealth. I'm Amy Novakovich. This is Ryan Wilson. We are from Nova Wealth Management. Follow us on Twitter at Nova Wealth Management, MGMT. Share this video out. I know after you hear all the discussion today, you will definitely find someone that this will be useful for. So share it out. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Instagram. What am I missing? Nothing.
Twitter?
I already said Twitter.
Oh,
and Facebook.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Share it.
So every week, I want to give you an instant tip right away so you don't have to stay here the entire time to get some sort of value. So last week,
you won't want to leave though.
I won't want to leave. As of last week, I started giving tips every week. So this week, it's not always going to be related to the market. Yikes, that sounded bad.
Gong show.
That's not always going to be related to the market. But if you haven't noticed, oil, if you don't follow markets, but just so you know, oil has really been falling. It's actually the worst streak that oil has had in 34 years. It's been down for 10 days in a row. This is my quick tip, guys, just for you guys joining right now. This isn't our topic for the day, but just a quick tip. So oil is down for the last 10 days, down to biggest in 34 years. So if you own oil, if you are not sure if you own oil, it's time to pick up the phone and call your advisor. If you own a lot of dividend-paying stocks, a lot of times those are energy stocks. You should definitely look at your portfolio. So if you're the type of person that doesn't really watch it, I'm just telling you to check in because there's a lot of things going on with oil and energy right now. And again, if you live off of dividends, you probably have some energy stocks. Or if you're looking for a place, this is not a recommendation, but if you're looking for a longer-term play, historically, energy does do well. It's very low right now. It might be time to just take a look at it. Again, not a recommendation, but something for you to look at. Okay, so now today, what we are talking about today,
Good stuff.
we are technically both millennials.
Yeah, we are. Proud.
Ryan is like right smack in the middle of it. I am at the older end of it, but I'm technically still a millennial. Last year, the millennials. But the things that we hear, like when we're planning with millennials, is that the costs are so high. You know, college, student loan debt, housing. Do I rent?
Hard. Life is so hard.
Oh my gosh. Do I buy a home? How do I buy a home? How do I afford it? What job do I take? I mean, seriously, I feel like millennials are so overwhelmed financially. So we dug into it a little bit and we said, I'm going to share this out right now so I'm not being rude and looking at my phone. But we said, why don't we compare other generations and what things used to cost. There's our delay.
Yeah.
What things used to cost compared to what people today, you know, are actually putting up with, let's say. So the first thing you had mentioned was, let's talk about something that actually is more expensive today, housing.
Yeah, so housing. So I started doing a little bit of research and finding out, you know, being a millennial, and I hear all the time that just life is so much more expensive, the cost of education, everything is so much more expensive than it used to be. And yes, that's true, but so is the dollar is worth more than it was. So, but there is one thing that in one area that we found the average, and in the statistics I'm using is starting in 1971, the average house bought in 1971 was $24,000. Now with inflation and $24,000 was the average house in 1971.
Okay.
Which is the equivalent today of around 150,000, depending on the exact calculator you use. It can be between 150 and 155.
And just curious, if you remember the cost of your first house, I would love for you to put it in the comments so we can kind of have a discussion here too.
Yeah, and today, if you're watching this, if you're watching us live, comment, give us your feedback, because one thing that I know as a millennial and we see all the time is that statistics are constantly being skewed. We're being told information that's not true.
Oh my gosh, talk about the statistic you just
so let's stick with the housing real quick. But we want to hear your feedback. If you are a baby boomer, a Gen Xer, a millennial like us, if you are a Gen Z, We want to hear the feedback because we want true statistics. Do you remember what your salary was when you got out of school in 1976?
Yes.
What it was in 1995? What your student loans were? Those types of things we want to know because we want true statistics.
Yes.
So a true statistic that we found was that the cost of housing, or what we think is true, the average was $24,000, which is the equivalent today of $150,000. Now today,
$156,000.
Okay, sure. I'm rounding because the numbers are different. But anyway, today in 2018, the average house is being purchased for $190,000. Now, again, that can be different. We live in Southwest Florida, where the housing is a lot more than that in most areas. In some areas, that's going to be lower. But that's the average. And so if we're going to take the average in 1971, we're going to take the averages now. And that's what it's at. So here's one, you millennials out there that are listening. You are right. Housing is a little bit more expensive.
On average,
even when taken into, the inflation rate. So it is a little bit more.
First real job after college, $25K.
Okay. Nice.
Do we need to say when that was, Tamara? Should we date you? Yes, Erica. Oh my gosh. So yes, start please putting in the feed. Like, what was your first job? What was your first hourly rate? I actually just got a text. I actually texted somebody who normally joins Finance Friday, and he is 64, I believe. And he said his very first job, he made 75 cents an hour. Is that right?
Probably.
Working at a bakery, like as a kid. Yeah. And then he paid $6,800 for a 67 Beetle.
Nice.
Right?
Yeah. So those are fun facts to know.
$4 an hour in 1979. Thank you.
But I'll continue on this. What got me into wanting everyone's feedback and like truth is because I looked up a statistic and I got a figure that told me that in 1971, the average cost of tuition was, let's see what my notes are here, $8,734. So we'll just say $9,000
annually.
No, for their 4-year degree. That's what it costs for a 4-year degree.
Okay, I'm assuming that's like a state university.
It didn't say, but let's just say for average, and this is just to kind of show some of the statistics that are out there that can be skewed. Okay, so that with the time value of money and inflation is the equivalent today of around $52,000 a year. Now,
for a 4-year degree.
For a 4-year degree. Yes. Now, in 2016, which was the tail end of their statistic, a 4-year degree cost, the total 4-year degree on average, was around $21,000. Okay, so if you're actually looking at how much college cost is, it actually is cheaper, or was cheaper in 2016 than it was comparatively in 1971.
For sure, and like, a lot of us get so stressed out about student loans. I want to just address student loans really quick. So a lot of you out there, when you have student loan debt, and I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but when you have student loans, you must address 2 things. There are 2 different things you have to look at with student loans. First, the interest rate. Okay, the interest rate. And when we're trying to build wealth, you're always trying to make more than what you're paying. Now, on interest rate, if you're paying 7% and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't make more than that. On student loans, it's just a tad bit different because cash flow wise, student loans is one of the very few pieces of debt. I call student loans actually good debt, just like a home loan. Hey, Jen, that you can bump this out years and years and years and years. And so your payments are super low. So cash flow wise, student loans actually make sense to keep that debt and to not kill yourself to pay down that debt. I know some of you, again, like you're like, oh my gosh, my student loans, I've had them forever. I mean, I just paid off my student loans, and y'all don't need to know how old I am, but it was a long time. Let's just say it's over 15 years, let's just say. But I just paid off my student loans 2 years ago. I just paid the payments because cash flow wise, it made sense to keep that money where it was and just pay the small payments because I could use the money that I would otherwise be just paying down on that debt to go make money, to invest in my business, to invest in other places. So cash flow wise, a student loan makes sense to just leave the debt, not in every case. Obviously, this is a general statement, I just don't want you guys to get super stressed out about your student debt because it's one of the things that is good debt. It's not like it's a 5-year loan and like, oh my gosh, you've got these giant payments and you've got these giant interest rates. It's different. You can defer it if you get in trouble. There's a whole bunch of things with student debt. So with that said, College expenses, going back to college expenses.
Yes.
They're technically lower today than they were on average in 71 if we inflate it.
Yeah. And
maybe we should talk about what inflation actually is. But
do you want to talk about inflation?
So inflation means that what used to cost less now costs more. Essentially, the value of the dollar has decreased. It takes more dollars to buy something than it used to. Mm-hmm. So the dollar is actually worth less. There's more dollars out there, so they're worth less. So like we said, $8,000 in 1971 to go to college now on average is $21,000. Hey, Melissa.
It's like when us millennials again hear our grandparents talk about how well, and when we hear like, oh, when gas was 7 cents a gallon or whatever it was,
but wages were lower. Like, it's all relative, guys.
Everything was relative, and that's my problem is with a lot of statistics that are out there now. They try to make it sound like we are worse off today. But if you take into account the inflation and everything built into it, the reality is that in 1971, someone was paying more for college than they are today.
And what millennials spend their money on. So I have this nice study from Charles Schwab, actually, that surveyed, I don't know how many people. There's this tiny writing
I can probably
here.
read it. I'm a younger.
You're so young, young millennials. But I don't know if it says the amount of people. But it's from Schwab. Yeah. So millennials, all right, spend 53% of their money on Ubers and taxis. Get that. Can you guys believe that? Ubers and taxis, 53%, compared to Gen X, which is only 29%, compared to 15% of baby boomers. Okay, the next cost, this is going to blow your mind. Coffee that costs more than $4. How many millennials, how much do you think millennials spend? So 60% of millennials say that they spend a lot of their money on $4 cups of coffee. Actually, more than $4 cups of coffee. Is that not insane?
Sometimes you get free ones if you have the gold card.
Give me a break. So then Gen X, 40% compared to boomers, 29%. And of course, that's all relative. There was no $4 cups of coffee, I don't think, in 1970. No. But we're relating it to what that cost would equate to back then. The latest electronic gadget.
You always got to have the new iPhone.
76% of millennials say that the majority of their money goes to the latest electronic gadget, that is a priority in their spending. Okay, versus 66% of Gen X and 49% of boomers. Clothes that I don't need. 70% of millennials, 50% Gen X, 45% boomers. So it's also where we're spending our money. We're spending our money on things that are not necessities. So you can't simply say, oh, things are more expensive, when really millennials focus their money on things that are more expensive. It's just, it wasn't the focus 30 years ago to spend money on coffee and spend time in coffee shops and spend money on, oh, that was a big one. Going out to a restaurant. I know we all think today, like going out to a restaurant, like, oh, going out to a restaurant is such a normal thing. Guys, it wasn't 30 or 40 years ago. For those of you that are on, I would love for you to start putting in like what you remember spending money on.
John said he got $4 an hour in 1979.
Right.
Assuming he was working 40 hours a week, it's roughly $7,500 a year. So again, that kind of backs up. That backs up, the statistics of when these people were getting out of college in 1971, the average was around $10,000 in wages for someone with a bachelor's degree.
But inflated today,
it's $51,000. That's the average. And so
it's a lot more money.
Yeah. So we're getting a lot equal. It's all relative to time and inflation. Everything's getting more expensive every year.
Jennifer said we weren't even allowed to order appetizers when we went out to eat. It was rare. I know, but these kids, millennials, go spend money on going out to eat. 79% in this survey by Charles Schwab millennials said the priority for my money, a lot of my money goes to going out to eat.
Yeah.
So you got to think of where you're spending your money.
This too goes back to if you didn't watch last week, we talked about being aware of where your money's going. Yes. And I think that this is just another point on that is if you're spending 80% of your income on going out to eat, you're probably not living.
No, it was 80% of millennials surveyed said that going out to eat was where the majority of their money went.
Still, if the majority of your money is going to go out to eat for dinner, then then I don't want to hear anybody complaining about cost of living.
Like Johnny brings up a great point. Like sit down and prioritize. Like how do you prioritize? See, I don't like the word goals. For those of you that have watched this show before, you know I don't like the word like goal. I like the words priorities, because that's something that you must do. A goal is something I kind of want to attain, like maybe, but we all have goals. Doesn't mean that it's a priority. So you have to list out your priorities and prioritize them and get organized and be aware of of how close you are to actually making those things a priority. You can sit back and say like, oh, getting my finances order is a priority. But then if you tell me you're going to go spend money on going out to eat, or like, you know, I'm trying to think of other expenses. Hair and nails, I'm kind of biased because I don't spend a ton of money there. I know that's important to a lot of women, but like millennials, like guys, if you're not making a lot of money and you're trying to make ends meet, like find another route. Like it's about prioritize. So I guess that would be my tip number one if we're going to try to stay organized here.
Yeah. 15 minutes in, we should be organized now.
Okay.
Now we should organize.
So for those of you just joining, we are comparing other generations to what millennials are going through today. So far we have found technically housing is a little more expensive today, not by a ton on average. And when we inflate it, meaning when we compare what things costed then and what things cost now, okay, housing is more expensive, but actually going to school is more, on average, is less expensive today than it was then. Also, what was the other one? Wages. Wages were actually less then than they are now. Like getting out of school, on average, people are making $50,000. So it's where you spend your money. So the number one tip is prioritize. And I know, again, that sounds really general, like, oh, great advice. But seriously, think back. Think about what you're spending, look at a credit card statement and see if what you spend your money on actually aligns with what you think you prioritize. Okay. Soapbox.
Yeah. Well, and if you have issues with student loans and things like that, adding more loans, like going out to eat and putting it on credit cards, is not going to help you in the future. It's
what
just going
makes
to
you
continue.
Money? Like when you're looking at, sorry, not to interrupt you, I'm getting
fine.
really like intense.
Yeah.
When you're spending money, I want you to ask yourself 3 questions. Do I need it? Does it make me money? Or does it help others? Right? If those 3 things aren't happening, if that doesn't transform that you're thinking on money, do I need it? Does it make you money? Or at least give you the opportunity to make money? Let me rephrase that. Or does it help others? Those 3 things. If it's not doing those 3 things, it's just categorized all of it in spending. In spending. It's as simple as that. So let's talk about also millennials when they're talking about, and we're categorizing like all millennials together. Again, technically I'm at the older end of millennial, but I feel like so different from like a 20-something. Like it's just.
Well, I live right in the middle of it, and
you're right smack in the middle.
And so I hear these things all the time, and I see my friends, people I went to college with, that are in the boat of saying, you know, life is more expensive. Kind of a woe is me, and it's just the reality of it, is that life is hard when you get out of college. You're for many of the people that are getting out of college, they are on their own for the first time. Maybe they're still not on their own, but they're on their own for the first time. They're having to figure out bills to pay.
Sometimes they're not, though, are they? I feel like
not necessarily.
Like literally comment now if you pay for your kids' stuff, or if you have adult children and you're still paying for your kids' stuff, because I feel like today it is way more common that kids are supported.
Absolutely.
Whereas I had 3 jobs at 18, and you know, I'm not even of the baby boomer generation or the Gen Xers, but I feel like it is so much more common today for people to pay for their kids when they're adults.
But if you are on your own and you are kind of trying to figure out life, the problem is that you're being told that you're in a worse spot, that it's harder now. And so when there's these things that are feeding that fire in you to say like, oh, you have that student loan debt, you shouldn't have to pay for that. Or if you have that,
how are you ever going to pay for
that? You aren't making anything.
Things.
It's just that I think that's the point that I was hoping to get across a little bit today, was that it's not
coming from a millennial.
It's not even that much different. You know, we can try to put all these numbers in perspective. The reality is that the only reason we as millennials feel that it's harder for us is because there are people telling us and supporting us in that thought.
So how do we give them ways to get organized? So first of all, this is kind of a mature way to think of it. Mature is not the right word. Complex way. But I want you to think of your finances. Have you ever looked at an Excel spreadsheet? Like, check out an Excel spreadsheet, right? It's just boxes up at the top and boxes on the side. You put stuff in those boxes that you owe money. So interest rates. I want you to look at your debt. I want you to look at your car loans, your home loans. I can't talk. Your student loans, and map them out by interest rate and prioritize them by interest rate. Chances are your student loans aren't on the higher interest rate end. It's usually credit cards. Chances are, if you are getting a loan for a house, that's on the lower end. So don't worry about pumping all this money into a home. Actually, you know what? This is for anybody. This is for anybody of any age. Please do not go putting a whole bunch of cash into a home where that isn't liquid. It's not money that you can necessarily get back out unless you go get a loan. Like, you're really tying up the money by putting extra money on a house, when in reality, if you are going to go sell it and you're going to get the gain anyways, do you see what I'm saying? All that money that I would have made on the house, I would have gotten anyways, regardless of if you're putting money into it. And it's just dead weight. It's just sitting there. Versus you have the asset anyways. If you've got a loan on it, you've got the home. So why not put that money where it works better in other places? Maybe another piece of real estate, maybe an investment account. It's working for you. You've already got the home. So why put it into the dead asset? You already have the asset. And if you sell it, you'll still get that gain. I think it's sometimes with millennials too, it's this big conversation of, do I own versus do I rent?
Yeah.
So you're renting, right?
I am right now.
Why?
Yeah. Well, part of it
not
was...
to call you out. I'm not saying it's wrong.
Part of it
conversation.
Was we weren't exactly sure where we wanted to be. I just got married in June, and so we were trying to kind of figure out and plan where we wanted to live, and so we didn't want to lock ourselves into a place where we could be moving in a year or so.
Okay.
So our plan, though, is to buy in about a year, and so renting long term. I was always brought up being taught that renting is a bad idea, that you're basically just throwing money away.
Term.
And we've talked about it. We've had conversations on these lives about renting versus owning. But I think that that renting for us is a short-term thing because we want to have value. We want to have something that
when you guys are young, like, are you building credit? Like, you're probably working on building credit.
Yeah. I mean,
right?
Luckily I've been paying car payments for almost 10 years now. And so I don't have like a home loan that I have to build me credit. I've had a credit card since I was 15 though.
Okay. So you have
I have credit and I've been building it ever since. And so I do have pretty good credit, and it's probably stronger than most people my age because I've had it for a longer period of time. But I think that that's also a thing that people struggle with in their 20s is if they buy, is because it's hard to get loans because credit isn't something that has really been thought of until you get out of college or live on your own for the first time.
Right. Okay. So I want to revisit real quick for those people joining. We've got some people joining. So we're talking today about comparing other generations to now. What we found is in our studies that owning a home on average is a little more expensive today, not terribly a ton higher. Wages was actually is actually more now. Wages in general after college is actually more now than it was in 71.
Yeah.
We were looking at 71.
Yeah.
That was what the study was. And then also college. College is actually cheaper today on average than it was in 71. So really, we don't have a lot of excuses. Like when you're talking to your kids, don't let them think like, oh, how can you do it on your own? You got it's so feasible. It's feasible just like we did it, just like our parents did it. It's just as feasible. The facts show it is just as feasible. Take it from people that know how to calculate inflation and know how to read statistics. Because when you're out there reading statistics, you don't know what you're sifting through and you don't know what is true and what is not. When you're a numbers person, you know how to see, like, wait a minute, that's not right. Mm-hmm. Like that was the statistic that you saw. Yeah. You're like, that is not right. How was it possible? What was it?
They were saying that the wages out of college
in 71
were more than
something.
they are today. And I was like, there's no way that that's true. So that's when I started to go back.
So what they were doing was they were inflating the wages. Inflating again means comparing costs between what things cost now and what things cost then. That's called inflation, the rise in costs. So he was comparing, and what they were saying is that wages then were more
than they are today.
So
they were using inflated wages, but they weren't inflating the cost of the college. So it was a skewed statistic. And that's what started getting me on this quest of figuring out what the truth is, because I think that, again, I said it a couple minutes ago, that as a millennial, we're just being told to sit in our pity parties and believe that we deserve more, that it is harder today. And those things just aren't true. And so, another one is housing. If you think that cost of living is so high as a millennial,
in comparison to wages.
Yeah, in comparison to wages and in comparison to before, it is slightly higher, but the reality is that is what it is. But you can also find, if you're patient, if you do your homework, there are places, even in Naples where we are, that you can find good buys that are within your means. And that is the key.
Right. Well, but wages are
higher, but so are the costs.
So it's all relative, though. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. So although the costs are higher, wages are higher. Like, it's all relative, guys. So, like, essentially cut with the excuses, like prioritize. Again, go through your statements, see if your spending aligns with what you think you're prioritizing, because sometimes it really doesn't. Like you're saying, oh, my priority is to get my debt paid off. My priority is to get a house. Right. Well, then you look at your credit card statements and you're spending 60% of your credit card statement on $4 coffee as you hold a cup of coffee.
I made this at home. So
what is that? That's a cup, though.
So on one of the big websites that sell things that you can subscribe to, you can get 250 travel cups for like $19. And so we got these because we make coffee.
Is that good for the environment?
I recycle.
Oh my gosh.
No, it might not be, but it's a lazy thing.
Are millennials supposed to care about the environment? Right?
Well, I also don't throw myself pity parties.
Well, this is true. Okay, so we went over several things. We went over prioritize, we went over look at your interest rates and your cash flows. The interest rates, again, remember I mentioned the Excel spreadsheet. Look at your interest rates, prioritize your money by the highest interest rate, not the highest balance. Dollar for dollar, you want more of your dollars going towards paying down your debt and not going towards paying the company. Percentage-wise, you are going to get killed if you are paying down just your highest balances or your lowest balances and not paying attention to interest rates. Interest rates is how much money you pay to other people. You want that gone. You want that lowered. So definitely focus and prioritize your interest rates. Also, look at your cash flows. Don't freak out about your student loans just because the balance is high. If the monthly payment is low in relation to other monthly payments, or because you can kick it out 30 years, please don't stress about just paying down that student debt. That's actually good debt, and that's a way that you can leave that debt out there and go use that money in other places to make you money. This is how you grow your wealth. You're using other people's money to make you money. Don't spend time wasting money on a loan that can be paid over 30 years just because you've got it in your head. You got to get it paid down. Make smart financial decisions based on interest rates and cash flows. Now, the third one is take a reality check on your spending. When you ask yourself three things: do I need it? Is there a potential to make me money, or is it helping others? That focuses your mindset on really the potential your money has, and it's not just something to throw away. It is in your hands to make the potential of your money maximize. That's in your hands, nobody else's. Okay, what else? Anything else?
I think that's probably good for today.
30 minutes. We were 6 minutes late starting.
Yeah.
But seriously, keep posting in the comments. Share this out, please. Or if you know millennials, if you know any like group pages that are full of millennials, definitely share this out. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to us, noblewealthmanagement.com. There's info@noblewealthmanagement, or you can email us directly. You know, I'm throwing pens. Amy at Noble Wealth Management, Ryan at Noble Wealth Management. Definitely reach out to us if you have questions on the whole. I know the whole interest rate and cash flow thing is a little more on the complicated side, and the other ones were easy. But if you want to just run a scenario by us on which one should I focus on, definitely feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to help you. All right, guys, have an awesome weekend. Thank you so much for joining, and we will see you next week.
Thanks, y'all.